Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Let me crank down the music a little bit. That ought to be a nice little background. Welcome to another session. We're going to switch gears again today, do something completely different. Hit on a topic that I've been thinking about talking about, but I've been avoiding for a while. I guess because I'm uncomfortable presenting this material without having had a chance to experiment with the latest theories that I have about it. I'm going to title this one Active Meditation, a Technique for Self-Healing and Self-Discovery. Okay, so let's start out with a definition of terms. What do I mean by active meditation? If you're familiar with the idea of meditation, you know that meditation is at its core basically a technique of silent reflection, often accompanied by spiritual motif, an idea of a goal, an idea of the state that you want to achieve through this meditation. You'll hear meditation touted as a key piece of the Buddhist, neo-Buddhist oneness, getting to nirvana narrative. Okay? And that kind of meditation, if you've done it, is focused on emptiness. I would say that that is a very passive meditation. In fact, that's one of the things that makes it so hard, is that your brain's actively trying to do something and your guru's telling you, no, you can't think, you can't do, keep your mind empty. And I will tell you that I don't have much respect for that kind of meditation. It can be useful for calming. It can achieve some of the same benefits that I'm going to talk about with active meditation, but it is extremely limited in scope and dangerous, because when you empty your mind, you allow basically other things to take over that interface between your mind and your soul, your real mind. And this is essentially part of what happens when you aren't aware that you are not your mind. You are not your brain. The brain is not where consciousness comes from. Your brain is just a coprocessor. And in fact, you've got two brains up here, the left and right hemisphere, at least. You've got two major pieces of brain that have sort of their own idea. And you've also got a small brain in your heart. Something that many people aren't aware of, but which is a physiologically proven fact. There is something of a vestigial brain in your heart. And this brain is where you get those sensations of the heart feeling. Anybody who has been moved by music, by love, by whatever, knows what I'm talking about. There's a certain feeling you get that definitely is associated with the heart and not the brain. Okay, so active meditation takes that a step further and develops this understanding that you are not your body. In fact, you, as a human soul, human incarnated soul, are the oversoul of the whole body. And there are undersouls that happen to be in charge of your organs. And each of these undersouls has their certain role. Many of them go about their business pretty much autonomously. They're on autopilot. They are zero-level consciousnesses. They got a program and they follow it, like an AI. This is how your body is able to run things without you having to consciously say beat, 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 beat to your heart. This is how your brain does its own thinking on its own time. This is where dreams come from. Some of them make absolutely no sense to us, right? Sometimes they are a result of the communion between the brain soul and the human soul, who generally develop a pretty good relationship with each other, but that's not always the case, is it? And anyone who has experienced being around somebody with a serious case of multiple personality disorder can vouch for that. This is what's going on in reality when somebody has multiple personalities. It's because there are multiple personalities. The brain, the soul that is your brain, may have a background in, I like being a human brain. I like being the wingman and not having to be the one responsible for the full show. And there are souls that like that kind of a role, and they gravitate to it, and they become brains forever, for as long as they're happy serving that role and finding oversouls that they like to serve under. Well, also the brain soul can be maybe a soul that was human and decided, you know what, I don't want to be in charge of everything. I like to think. I like to do the thinking part. I'm going to step down and let somebody else take the dirty work of this body, and I'm just going to do the thinking. And that tends to be the people who let their brain dominate their being. Very cold, rational, calculating people that tend to be very opinionated, don't tend to let the heart enter much into their equation of worldview. There are other people who may have an oversoul of the heart, who used to be human and likes being that heart that can sort of twist their oversoul into doing what they want, getting the heart needs met, and not taking the blame for what the oversoul of the whole body does. And I think we all know people who have become ruled by the heart, who push the brain into the background and live with their heart. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Just like living through the brain is not a bad thing, but you are abdicating the leadership of your body to that other soul. And to the extent that these other souls aren't on the same program with the leader, or their, quote, siblings, the other organs, the other cells of your body, this is where internal trauma comes from, which is what generates dishealth, disease. Okay? So, active meditation is meditation that understands this fact and uses it instead of letting it use you. What do I mean by that? Well, the oversoul of your whole body, that's your soul, has the ability to manifest things. This is the truth of spiritual energy. However, to really understand how it works, it's not just the law of attraction, whatever I think about, I'm going to get. No, it has to be done with the understanding that whatever you do, whatever manipulation you do, whatever control you try to take, whatever you try to visualize, you're going to have to force on some other soul. Now, I would venture to suggest that the best souls to experiment on when you're trying to use your spiritual power are the ones that you already control because they're part of your own body. You've already been chosen as their leader for one incarnation. So they're kind of like stuck with whatever dog food you want to feed them. And this is essentially, why we do have our bodies turn against us. Why eventually they will rebel and say, you know what, I want to move on to another incarnation because this bastard is making me miserable. Okay? So this all ties into living a longer life, living a healthier life, and the truth, the reality of the so-called law of attraction. All right, so what I'm going to propose to you is a technique that I learned during my years as an actor and an acting coach. I learned this technique from an acting coach, and I made it my own, extended it, and expanded it to work with the people that I had as students. I have not used this technique since I've had my big spiritual awakening, and that's why I haven't talked about it much. So here's some caveats. I know I can do this, and it works for most actors. Actors tend to be people who are good at visualizing. They are good at this law of attraction stuff. They have good imaginations, typically. And so maybe they have an inherent advantage. And so I'm going to describe the technique to you, and I'm going to tell you that in its incarnation, as I would like to do it as a spiritual tool, it is not a group exercise. You can do this as a group exercise, just like gurus do emptiness meditation on a group basis. That forces the same dog food on every soul. And sometimes that's what they need, and sometimes it's not what they need. And so I would highly recommend, if you have an interest in this technique after I describe it, you either develop your own methodology, and I'll give you hints and ideas for doing that, or you find somebody who can give you individual coaching on it. Now, I have not tried to do this coaching remotely. It is a spiritual technique. I believe that you don't necessarily have the gift of helping guide people through meditation. It's similar to past life regression hypnosis. Not everybody can do it. It's not a skill you can learn, contrary to the folks that are charging you, some thousands of dollars to get a certificate in it. Spiritual skills don't work that way. Spiritual gifts don't work that way. And even if somebody has a gift to do this, doesn't mean that they can be successful with that gift on everybody. Because everything that happens spiritually between souls is based upon how well those souls resonate. And there's not a soul in the whole multiverse that resonates with every other for every instant of time. We're constantly coming into and out of resonance or having partial resonances with other souls around us. And yes, that can extend over a distance, but like most forces that act over a distance, unless the bond is really strong and maintained by both sides, like, the cosmic game of telephone, it's not going to be very effective. Okay, so that said, if there's somebody, I was actually hoping that I would find somebody interested in doing a session live, kind of a live experiment to see how this might work, to show people the technique, give them an idea of how it works in practice, because you can talk about something, but until you actually see it, and experience it yourself, it's maybe not going to give you the right lesson out of it, right? That's why we need reincarnation, so we can have a lot of lessons and get very personal experience with many different points of view. Okay, so I'm gonna move on now and talk about how we do this active meditation thing. Okay, first step is, as any meditation would start, you want to be in a relaxed, comfortable state. You want to have a very well oxygenated body. Not too much oxygen, not, not breathing yourself into hyperventilation. Slow, steady breathing. Close your eyes if you want to. I'd recommend most people do this better with closed eyes. Long, deep breaths in, long, deep breaths out. And you can combine this with vocal exercises or what amounts to a chant to go with it. If you like the oh, this is where Om came from, in case you were wondering. Get the subject relaxed, and maybe a good place is to start with emptiness. Okay, let's take all the cares and concerns of the day and let's let them fade away. And then let's focus our mind on creating something simple. Let's create a little golf ball sized colored ball. Let's make that ball, well, most of the time when you're doing this, not necessarily as an actor, because you can use this technique to generate a lot of emotions, but if you're not an actor, generally you want to meditate to calm down. So let's start with a calming color. Most people find blue a calming color, the sky blue. Let's envision this little ball of sky blue right in the middle of your forehead, just above your eyes. In fact, right where your third eye would be, the pineal gland. Another vestigial brain that sort of operates as one of the few parts of the brain that you only have one of, interestingly enough. It's not hemispheric. This is what proves that is essentially a very different organ than the rest of the brain, though materialist science would disagree with you. Okay, so let's envision this blue ball right there where your third eye would be. This is, I don't know, maybe this technique goes back a long time, because if you look at the ancient carvings of Buddhas and rishis and things like that, they tend to have this third eye that's blue, right? Okay, and hold on to that vision. See how real you can make it. It may fade in and out. It may not be easy to maintain, to manifest. Okay? You can play with it a little bit, make it a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. If blue doesn't feel very good to you, try changing the color and see if there's other colors that evoke an emotional state that you feel more comfortable with or fits better with your intention, what you want to get out of this meditation. Maybe you're meditating because you had a fight. Sometimes that requires getting back to the state of anger. Red might be a good ball to use there. Or if you're orange man bad, deranged, maybe orange will be the perfect thing to get you in that state of righteous anger that is going to allow you to deal with that psychosis. It is a play above all. And this is what you have to understand in this, is it needs to be play. If you're forcing it, if you're doing it as punishment to yourself or viewing it as a penance. I've got to do this because Rob said that's what it would take to get me to the next level. Nah, that's not how it works. It's got to be playful. It's got to be cooperative. And if you can't play with your pineal gland, pineal brain, you're going to have very little chance of being able to play with the other souls of your body. Because as many people have figured out, this pineal gland, this pineal brain, is actually the interface to your soul. This is where the body leaves off and the soul, Merkaba, begins. Okay, so it's a very important part of your body. It is part of your body and it has its own soul. It is not you. It is, this is in the Eastern system of chakras. This is in the Western system of the pentagram of human Merkaba, or the hexagram, or the double tetrahedron, depending on how good your visualization skills are and how advanced your spiritual basis for understanding the full reality of the multiverse is. Okay? There were times in human history where it was thought there were only 5 levels, and if you got to the level 5, the 5th dimension, you'd arrived. And there's still many people who believe that, aren't there? There are others that, no, it's 6. But that's a 2-dimensional idea of the Merkaba, the Star of David. Not right. Well, then there must be 8. But that only takes into account the physical and the spiritual Merkaba, and doesn't realize that there's also a God component to the Merkaba. That's where you get all 12 dimensions. Okay, so we're exercising these dimensions and opening communication with those other souls using the spiritual level of communication. Thought is spirit. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but it is. That's what spirit is all about. That's what consciousness is all about. And this is an exercise in expanding consciousness and communing with the other consciousnesses in your body, getting them to share the same vision. Okay, so now that we've got that little ball where we can pretty well control it, close in touch with the pineal gland, let's see if we can move it around. Let's take that ball and move it to an eye. And notice how the eye that now has the ball may feel different, may be observing a little different in the presence of that ball. You can change the ball around a little bit. If you have a hard time envisioning a ball, some people find that vision of a loved one or a pet makes a good focus object. Whatever you want to use, you can change that. You can play with that. Remember, it's all a game. See how that eye responds. Is it easier or harder to maintain the image? Does it have a more preferred image? Does it have ideas of its own, what image you would like? And all of a sudden, another set of images or another idea creeps into your brain that wasn't there before. If it looks interesting, go with it. Let that other soul take over for a little while and drive the experiment. And this is the key. The other key is it's a game, but it's also a scientific game. Science is about experimentation, setting up conditions and then observing. And in this case, since we're experimenting with multiple souls, we have to really learn much, we have to let different souls be the observer or the experiencer or the actor. So you can view this whole process, this meditative process, as effectively putting on a spiritual play within your body. And you get to choose who's the director, who's the actor, and who are the audience. And change that as you get more familiar, if you get better at the game. This is the essence of what I think true Zen technique is. This is the real secret that they don't teach the young ones because they figure it's just beyond them and too confusing, and they don't really understand it fully themselves. They've done these exercises that were passed down by teacher after teacher after teacher who never had the benefit of really knowing anything about science, and especially anything about spiritual science. It was all conjecture. Just like the pentagram system of the occult is conjecture. The chakra system of the East is conjecture. It's not complete. It's a nice stab at truth that has some usefulness, but it's not the full truth. It has its limits. Okay, so I've basically described the essence of the method, and beyond that, you can pretty much take it anywhere you want to go. Now, this is where, okay, now you know the technique, how do you use it individually? And that's where, let's take this little ball, let's see if we can make it expand to fill the whole body. After we played with each of the major organs, can we make it fill a whole arm? Can we make it fill the other arm? You can play fun little games like turn it into a fluid and let it spill over from one part of your body to another. And notice how your body feels before and after. Does it feel more at stress, more at ease? Do certain emotions come to the fore? Certain ideas come to the fore? As a result of going by different parts of the body? I think you will find that some parts of your body are more vocal than others. And that only stands to reason because most of the undersouls in your body are zero-level consciousness. They're just running a program. A heart works like this, and I'm going to do heart things, and I'm going to follow my program. And if you've got a zero-level consciousness heart, you're not going to get turned on by deep music. You might get something out of a rhythm that challenges your rhythm, and you can feel that dissonance. This is why they've discovered that the most common way to influence people through the heart is with rhythm. This is why virtually every piece of music that's written in the pop world has some kind of a beat. That's a way to get through to the densest soul, the lowest level of consciousness. And if you can establish this relationship, which is what they're essentially doing, what I'm describing as active meditation, only they're doing it to you without telling you what they're doing. They're actively manipulating you through your spiritual sensitivities. And this is the other piece of the devolution of pop music, is that they have discovered that there are certain rhythmic and melodic elements that have the most effect on the most human incarnated souls, because most of them are fairly new souls. as I've told you in other segments, most of the humans you're going to encounter on a daily basis are fresh out of the level 0 vat. They're replacements for higher level souls that got the Mandela effect done on them. They're not playing in this universe anymore because they were playing outside the rules of the universe that you occupy. We talked about that a lot in other sessions, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. But essentially, most of the souls you'll encounter incarnated in human form are low consciousness souls who are stand-ins. Now, they seem high consciousness because they were a replacement for a soul of a fairly conscious level. But at the moment that they got switched out of this universe, their consciousness kind of became frozen as a set of behaviors that soul, the original, had. They're kind of an AI clone of that person, if you will. And those people can advance. It's pretty hard because you've got to step out of your programming. That's how consciousness works. If you're always working from within your programming, you are not making decisions. You are not making choices. And making decisions and making choices is how we advance spiritually. Now, this is another reason why this exercise, this active meditation, is so great, because a good practitioner, or if you're doing it yourself and you've taught yourself how to do this technique, you can force yourself to make decisions. You can allow the other souls in your body to make decisions, to raise their consciousness. You can teach them to be more conscious, more aware of each other, more aware of you. And if you do it in a benevolent, non-manipulative, non-tyrannical way, generally these other souls will respond and say, hey, this guy's a pretty good leader. I think I'm going to listen to him more. I'm learning something from this other soul that I chose to be part of the body of. And that's why they chose you, right? It's all a choice. Incarnations are always choices. Now, it's not pie as the sky choices. You're given pretty limited range of choices based upon the heaven that you're in as a result of your previous life. This is how we advance or retreat as a soul. If you show promise, you're going to be given more choices. Eventually, if you're extremely promising, you might be given the choice to incarnate as a human, which is a pretty advanced soul vehicle, very complex vehicle to drive. And that's what makes it so hard. That's why we have so much pain and suffering. You don't want to have pain and suffering? Hey, go incarnate as a grain of sand. Not much pain and suffering there, at least until your world, your sun goes supernova and melts you, and you become crystallized sand. At any rate, this technique is something that will help you explore your spiritual nature. If you find it very difficult to do, it's very likely that you are starting from a point of a very close to zero level consciousness. Now, that doesn't mean that you're stupid, that you're not intelligent. You've got the brain power of any other human. You've just got the soul power of a newbie. You've got the program that was running in your original to go on. And you can choose to just follow the program, or you can question it. Most people who find themselves in this universe as a zero consciousness soul find it easiest just to follow the program. because they've never had any experience of making choices. And they have at least the memories of the soul that they replaced, and could be generally a memory of having made bad choices. So these stand-in zero-level souls tend not to step outside the box too much. And that's what makes them useful, because they don't buck the system that they're in. They don't interfere with whatever God's plan drives this particular universe. This is how plans get done at a large scale in the face of free will. Okay, but this is this technique I'm teaching you, if you can learn to do it, and it may not be easy, is going to be helping you to become conscious by forcing decisions that are not highly karmic. You can push a little bit on the souls that you're trying to get communicating within your body through this technique, and you can do it in a way that's considered least manipulative. You're not trying to force them to do something, you know. I mean, it's like a kid, okay? You force a kid to pick up their room. Is that bad karma? Well, no, it's actually teaching them a good habit, right? It's a good habit to keep your room tidy in general, so that you know where you can find things, and so if you have a guest, you aren't embarrassed by all the mess around you. I wish somebody taught me that lesson better. I don't do it very well. So if you envision what you're doing that way, I think that's kind of how you can look at it. And that's how, as the oversoul of a human vehicle, you can best lead your body. And if you learn how to lead your body, let me tell you, you're going to learn a lot of skills that will help you lead others. This is why we have soul vehicles like the human form. It's a leadership training vehicle, a leadership challenging vehicle. If you're not good at leadership, you're going to fail. You're going to be very unhappy with your performance as a human being. You're going to have a lot of angst. You're going to have a lot of pain and suffering and grief and cause a lot of it. And that's basically how karma is built up, that discourages you from banging your head on something you're not very good at for very long. And to the extent that you can expand this technique, you can go almost anywhere with it. And this is why I can't really go much further than this unless I'm working with an individual. I don't know what their particular passions are, what their past life experience is, what level of a soul they are, etc. And you have to know these things if you're going to be using techniques like this constructively and not manipulatively. And to the extent that somebody is giving you some method of self-help or self-exploration, enlightenment, and they don't really comprehend the truth that I'm telling you, they could be doing a lot of harm. And even if they're appealing to the lowest common denominator, that's not always going to be good for everybody. Perfect example, a lot of people think, oh, psychedelic plants are it. Everybody should be forced to do ayahuasca before they can run for political office. I've heard that one a few times lately, have you? And this is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. It's not a magic pill. And I absolutely know examples of people who have had increased mental problems, who have had more depression, who have been completely destroyed by exploring psychedelic drugs. I don't want to talk about that, but it's true. And it's not just true of LSD. It's true of marijuana. It's true of ayahuasca. It's true of magic mushrooms. And those people that are ignoring the dark side of what they're doing are feeding tyranny. They're feeding disinformation. They're feeding disinformation that could be harmful to others. I'm not advocating against any of these things. I have partaken of almost all of them. I've yet to do mushrooms, magic mushrooms. I've never done LSD. But I've made ayahuasca and drunk with a shaman from Colombia. And I found certain strains of marijuana that I enjoy for their creative benefits. I don't use anymore because I live in a country where all that's illegal, and I don't feel the need for it. The only spiritual lifter that I seem to be closely aligned with is red wine, which I can't get much of here either because it's really expensive in Indonesia and kind of frowned on because it's a mostly Muslim country. So I don't have much wine anymore. I'm not bent out of shape for it. I was never addicted to it. And this is another thing. I mean, anybody that tells you that something is bad for you without finding out why you use that substance, how you use that substance, could be doing harm to you. How many people do you know who were alcoholics who developed even worse addictions when they stopped? How many smokers do you know who stopped smoking and became very, very nasty people? Or developed completely unrelated health issues? There's no pat cure. Anybody that tells you one size fits all, spiritually, physically, medically, mentally, is generalizing. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't do some of that. That's something you have to do if you're going to be any kind of a healing practitioner. But if you overgeneralize or you oversell your personal specialty, if you simply push pills without knowing the real science behind the pills, which is always spiritual science, you got to get that through your thick skulls or you're never going to get anywhere, especially in the area of helping others. All healing is spiritual or has a spiritual component. There are things you can do to accelerate healing, to guide healing, which include medicines, which include drugs, which include psychedelics, all sorts of therapies that might or might not work. Anyone that tells you this is the magic sauce, buy my book and you'll know everything, is a fucking idiot. I don't mind using the F word in that context. They fancy themselves to have reached the God level of consciousness, and I can guarantee you they're not there if that's their approach to making their way in the world. So I guess I'm going to finish this with a little challenge to anybody. If any of you out there are interested in this active meditation technique, would like to experiment with it and try a session with me, let me know. And I can do duos on this channel pretty much with anybody that's got a strong internet connection. Let's get together, talk it over first, find out, where you're at spiritually and physically, and if we have a degree of resonance, and if it seems like a good fit, let's try it out. And knowing that you are sort of being a guinea pig, and the experience may not lead to something necessarily wonderful for you. It's an exploration. into the unknown inside you. It could dredge up past life memories of a heart that's been broken so many times that it's not able to recover. And this is the downside of this, is that there's no magic cure for anything. If one of the souls in your body is an end time loser, well, that's what you're stuck with. And you maybe just have to live with that naysayer, that one soul that gets in the way of your oneness. And there's a reason for that. There's a lesson in that you can't control everything. And that's a lesson even gods have a hard time learning, especially gods, I guess, that there is no way to control everything. There are some gods, like the one Borg I talked to you about a lot, who think they can control everything if they can just assimilate everybody into their hive mind. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way, because at least in the physical world, that hive mind is based upon souls inhabiting physical vehicles, and those vehicles have expiration dates. That's why the human vessel tends to only live about 100 years. That's not a bad thing to have a time limit, because that gives you sort of an automatic out when you've had about enough time to learn all the lessons that were necessary to be learned in that incarnation vehicle. I don't know why anybody would want to live forever. That's insane. It's like crawling into a shell, your Bill Gates shell, and deciding that this is perfection and I just want to extend perfection. Man, that's a pretty a pretty strange hermit crab, I would call these kind of folks. At any rate, like, share, subscribe, interact in any way. Tune into the channel. I'm getting more subscribers and more viewers, so I don't know, maybe the algorithm is finally turning to my side. Or maybe the world's going to end tomorrow. I don't know. At any rate, for the Omnist Hour, this is Rob Tromp. I'll see you next time.